Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the Haydn Symphony Crusade. And we're up to Symphony number 97 in C major from the first set of 6 that Haydn wrote for his London trips around 1792, somewhere in there. Oh my God, this is a symphony. You know, it's so funny. I always enjoyed this symphony, even though it's not one of the more popular ones, because it has amazing timpani parts. I mean, the timpani kind of dictate the whole course of the first movement. And so I always found it like thrillingly written, and it really is, it's militant, and it has this really satisfying, I call it a groundedness, it's solid and exciting. And so it's like, well, it's a great symphony, and I always liked it. But then I started really listening to it, and I just can't wait to tell you what I found. It's such an incredibly put together piece of music. I mean, the relationships between the movements and the themes and the ideas of that. I mean, there's so much more than just the timpani parts, much as I hate to say it, but it's mind blowing. This symphony, it really is, and nobody really knows it very well because it doesn't have a nickname. If I had to give it a nickname, I would call it the Darwinian. Yes, because it is all about evolution. That's what happens in this symphony. It evolves, and it evolves in the most remarkable ways. And I think when I'm done, you're going to agree with me that it's Darwinian. I mean, there's just no other way to express it. So, I mean, Darwin didn't exist then, when Haydn was writing it, but that's okay. With hindsight, we can call it that. So the way to talk about this symphony, it's operating on so many different levels, is to move from the small to the large, from the microscopic to the macroscopic. And I think you'll see that there's a certain naturalness to that approach that really suits the music. To start, all of the themes go down. You can't get much more microscopic than that, can you? I mean, it's such a simple concept. The very opening of the Allegro, da, 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 da. I mean, boomf, they go down, often in 4-note increments, by the way. And that's something that you should keep in mind. All the tunes go in this direction. Yeah, I mean, they may go up first, or they may see, but they ultimately wind up going down. And going down is not a depressing thing. We're not talking about going down into the, endless abyss of psychic anguish or anything like that. It's just like I said, a groundedness, a sense of satisfying resolution and solid foundations. This symphony has rock solid foundations. One of the reasons we feel that is because the direction of the motives and the larger melodies and the cadences is always in a downward direction. So if you just keep that in mind, you've achieved a lot. You'll have noticed a lot. It's very funny. People listen to these things and they don't go, well, you don't notice. So what I'm saying to you is notice downward directing melodies and ideas, because they're all doing it. If they start going up, they'll wind up going down. So that's number one. Number two, there are 2 rhythmic ideas in this symphony which permeate the melodic and other fabric. There's melodies and there's motion music and there's motives and all that stuff. And these 2 tiny rhythms are all over the place, and it's very deliberate. As you hear Haydn work it out, you'll hear just how deliberate it is. The first is bump-ba-dum, dum-ba-dum. The opening is da, 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 that opening of the Allegro. Do, 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 bum-bum, bum-ba-dum, bum-ba-dum, bum-bum, bum-bum, like that. So it's bum-ba-dum. Keep in mind, bump-ba-dum. You can hear a lot of bump-ba-dum. And the other one is da-da-dum, just that. Da-da-dum. It's 3 notes with an accent or slight prolongation of the one in the middle. Bum-ba-dum, bum-ba-dum, bum-ba-dum. If you keep those 2 little things in mind, that also gets you very far in understanding the way that this symphony is put together. And then once we do the rhythmic thing, so there's a rhythmic element, and there's a sort of directional element, And then, now we get to the hot stuff. The symphony has a motto, and every theme in the symphony derives from the motto, one way or another. Some are closer melodically, some are closer in terms of their shape, but the motto governs. And the motto is incredibly simple. It's in the first few seconds of the symphony. It's ya ba da 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 da. Notice it goes down. It has two halves. The first half is just a lyrical something. That lyrical something can go up, it can stay flat, it can do so. It's a tunelet. And then a fall, a dying fall that goes down, establishing the downward trajectory of all of the tunes that follow. So it's very simple. In fact, I'm going to play you the motto. It's very simple rather than sing it. I'm going to do a little singing, but I actually have 20 examples to get through. Count them, 20, because that's the kind of symphony it is. It's just you have to. You just have. You'll hear when you hear them, you'll understand why. But anyway, here is the motto. Okay, very, very, very simple. We're going to hear it about 1,000,000 times because I play it in these examples. For example, though, I play it in the examples for example. It sounds stupid. All right, so now we're going to talk about evolution, how this motto evolves throughout the symphony. And we're going to play all of the examples in which it does that so that you get a sense of what to listen for and how Haydn's working with his material. We begin with, the return of the motto at the end of the first movement exposition, the initial presentation of themes. Haydn rounds out that section of the first movement with a return to the motto. And as with all of these examples, I play the original motto first and then the revised version, if you want to call it, the next evolutionary version, the next phase on its journey. So you hear the original and then you can compare them directly, one after the other. I insert a little pause between them. So here is the version that happens at the end of the first movement exposition. So that's very clear. You can hear that you heard the first version again, and then the slightly simplified, but with a dancey kind of ending added. Yum bum ba da dum bum ba da dum bum ba da dum bum ba da dum bum. So it's very charming, and it starts to dance a little bit. So that's the first phase. The next step on the motto's evolutionary journey is the opening theme of the second movement. Now you'll notice that this particular version uses the rhythm, bump ba dum. It's da da dum ba da dum ba da 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 dum, and then the dying fall. So it's the same shape or a similar shape to the motto, and actually melodically a little bit similar too. And you hear that concluding descent. So here's the motto, as we've heard it before, the original, and followed by the opening theme, or the beginning of the opening theme of the second movement. Okay, get that? The next time we hear the motto is when we hear the opening of the minuet. Now, this minuet is, when we get to it, it's a remarkable minuet in many, 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 many ways. But it doesn't use the bump-a-dump rhythm. It uses the bump-ba-dump, bump-bump, bump-ba-dump, bump-bump. It uses the other rhythm, dun-da-dum. And how that arises, we're going to talk about in detail in a bit. But I just want to play you the opening of the minuet, which has the same dun-da-da-da-dum, bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum, just like the motto, but this actually has two halves, this theme, and they're mirror images of each other. You hear the motto version, and then it reverses. Da 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 yum yum da 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 da. Remember how the motto began? Ya da 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 da. Well, this does that. Da da da, except it's the end because he's playing it backwards and upside down. Essentially, that's what he does, which is really remarkable. Brahms, by the way, does the same thing in the third movement of his first symphony. You know, the clarinet going. Then Brahms inverts it. Like that. Well, never mind, I can't do it. But, you know, I mean, this is a not infrequently encountered device, but it's not usually done so artistically or charmingly. So here is the motto, followed by its frontwards and backwards upside down version at the beginning of the minuet. Really cool, isn't it? It's absolutely nifty. And to make it even better, oh yes, it gets even better. The theme of the trio or middle section, which is one of Haydn's most folk-like, innocent, delicious, rural melodies, is also based on the motto. And it's based on, believe it or not, the first evolution of the motto. That is the one at the end of the exposition, the one that started to dance, you know, the one that like that. Well, that's what this does. So it's based on an evolved version of the motto. It's an evolution of an evolution. So here is the trio of the minuet with the two versions that it's based on. I mean, you know, I'm already so aghast with how fascinating this is. And then last but not least, the opening theme of the finale is clearly based on the motto. And it's a fast movement. It's rambunctious and buoyant and so different in character from, you know, that sort of elegiac opening. It's sad, a little wistful. And this is like, ha-ha! But it's the same idea. A little melodic phrase and then a descent. And here is the motto, followed by the opening of the finale. Evolutionary indeed, isn't it? I mean, it's like totally fascinatingly, amazingly, wonderfully evolutionary. Okay, so that's how the motto evolves frontwards. Now we're going to do it backwards, sort of, kind of. Why is that? Well, because you may have noticed that the motto and its first version, the first evolution at the end of the exposition, had a dance-like little codetta. It's like a little ending. It's really dum dum ba da dum bum ba da dum bum. And that little ending consisted of 3 identical or almost identical gestures that brings it to a firm cadence. We call it a cadence because it concludes the melody in the satisfying home key that it's supposed to be in. And every single tune in the symphony, in addition to being based on the motto, concludes with that kind of a cadence. A 3-part, 3-motive, 3-gesture, 3-something cadence that takes it home. And if the melody is like the one in the first movement, which, the motto and then its first version, that is, it has what you might call an original version and a closing version, the version with the cadence, then the second version will end that way. If it's an independent melody that doesn't have recur or have sort of separate sections with a separate repeat that ends in a cadence, then it just ends in the cadence. But every tune does this. Every single tune when you get to the end. And we will start with the one in the finale. If you remember now, the first of all, I'm going to play the first version. Remember that. And then listen to the final version of the cadence version of the theme from the finale. Here it is. See the cadence. Da 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 ba dum pa 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 ba dum pa 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 do 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 do. That's the cadence version, and you'll notice the rhythm. Da 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 dum ba dum bum 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 ba dum bum 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 da 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 bum ba dum bum bum. Get it? It's got the rhythm. Yes, it has that rhythm. So that's also extraordinarily important. Haydn is building his themes using the materials that we talked about, the microscopic materials, and also doing other longer development things. So we're moving from smaller to larger. Now, the same thing happens in the minuet. The conclusion of the minuet. Da 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 bum ba dum bum ba dum bum 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 bum. Get it? 3 parts. In this case, the other rhythm, dum ba-dum, bum ba-dum, bum ba-dum, and then the descent for the final cadence. So here is the first evolved version of the motto with the cadence idea and the way it ends the minuet. And the same thing is true of the second movement. Yes, that theme from the second movement. Now, the theme of the second movement is very interesting because it has 2 halves. And each half really is its own independent version of the motto theme. And you've already heard the first one. Da-da-dum, ba-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum, da-da-da-da, ba-bum. Right? Okay, that's that one. Then the second half has the cadence. And it's 4 notes descending, just like we heard or will hear. We haven't yet at the opening of the first movement. Da 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 dum, ya da da dum, dum ba ya da 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 dum. So that's the cadence version of the theme of the second movement. So here is that with the motto and then the cadence version. Now Haydn plays a little trick on us actually in that particular cadence version, because sometimes the cadence gets repeated. Sometimes you hear it twice, but it's still a cadence. I mean, he goes back and repeats it, but it doesn't change its harmonic function. And when we say cadence, that's what we're thinking of, or its basic structure of 3 repeated motives. So, that's the second movement one. And we'll talk about how Haydn, it foils our expectations when we talk about the second movement in a little bit more detail. And then there are 2 tunes which have no specific repetition. The trio of the minuet and the second subject of the first movement. But both of them end with the same cadence formula. 3 repetitions leading to a full close, as we call it in the biz, a satisfying rounding off or a period at the end of the phrase. And I have those both stuck together in one example. In this case, we're just going to hear the second subject and then the trio, and you can hear at the end of each melody, the trio of the minuet is so cool. Jump, bum, ba, bum, bum, ba, ba, bum, bum, ba, 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 bum. 1, 2, 3, and we're done. And you'll hear it also in the first movement. So here are those 2 melodies. Okay, so now you know essentially what you're listening for. You're listening for these little rhythms, bum ba dum and da da da. You're listening for evolutions of the motto. You're listening for these cadence gestures at the end of every single melody in the symphony, but always done in a way that's unexpected, so that Haydn he never bores us. He's always keen on bringing subtle changes on these formulae, and you'll hear those as the music proceeds. And we are ready, almost ready, to attack the music itself. The entire first movement. We're not going to hear the entire symphony. We should. But how Haydn's working with these ideas on a larger scale. See, it's getting bigger. It gets bigger and bigger. And before we get to the first movement exposition, you have to hear one other thing, because the introduction actually has 2 opening ideas that are motto-like. First, the one I've played you 150 times already. And then there's another version of it, one that specifically rises and falls. Da 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 da. There's that. Da 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 da. It's sort of a mountain shape, a hill, if you want to call it that. That actually anticipates the second subject of the first movement. So I wanted to just let you know that, because it's going to be very important in the first movement, that shape, that sort of hill thing. And so I want to play you that little tiny bit of the introduction, and then the second subject of the first movement, so you can hear how it sounds speeded up when Haydn turns it into the actual material of the Allegro section. Here that is. Isn't it great having all these examples? It's so much fun. It was so much fun putting this together. I can't even tell you what a joy that was. Anyway, and I'm serious. It was just thrilling to pull all this stuff out and arrange it. It's really, really cool. So now, at last, we are ready to hear long stretches of music. And you can hear what Haydn does with all of these ideas that he's got worked out for us, or that he worked out in the course of the composition. The first movement has, as you may have guessed, an introduction. The introduction consists of the motto, and then 2 versions of the hilly version of the motto, and then 2 repeats of the original motto, and then it gets interrupted by the Allegro. Now, normally in Haydn's introductions, the introductions are independent. They could almost be separate movements sometimes. They come to a full stop, and then the Allegro begins. Here, that doesn't happen. And the fact that it doesn't happen is really important. It gets chopped off, interrupted by the beginning of the allegro. It doesn't have a chance to finish itself. And that's why, I'm telling you in advance, Haydn returns to it at the end of the exposition, and will return to it again in the coda of the symphony, and possibly a little bit in the coda of the finale. In other words, the introduction has unfinished business, and Haydn delays that business until the very end of the movement, very end of the symphony. Or so you may argue. You could legitimately argue something happens there too. But anyway, so here's the exposition. I include the introduction at this time because they are inseparable. You cannot treat the introduction as a separate thing. It is woven into the fabric of the exposition. Now, when you listen to the exposition, pay attention to the rhythm, bump-a-dump, which you're going to hear constantly, especially in the motion music, and the hill version. It goes in the motion music, which will become the second subject. All of that's anticipated in the fabric, the texture of the music as it progresses. And that's what I mean by it's just tightly woven. Haydn is working with his material extensively and amazingly. So here is the exposition of the first movement. It's very exciting, isn't it? You understand why I like the timpani pounding away, and and it's just really brilliant, incredibly brilliant. And what's so wonderful about it is that these melodies, that beautiful second subject, da 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 da, it's just beautiful. Thinking totally original theme, totally contrasted with what's come before. It seems that way, but when you really listen, I mean, that's what makes classical music generally, and Haydn especially, worth listening to more than once, because the more you listen, the more you hear. And then you begin to realize how interrelated it all is. You'll also note that the opening theme, ba da da dum bum 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 ba dum bum ba dum, that business, that does not have the cadence at the end of it because it's open-ended. It never ends. It just runs right into the motion music and onto the second subject. So there's no concluding punctuation at the end of the first musical sentence. It just keeps going. For it's a very big paragraph, that opening paragraph. So there's that. Now, after the exposition, we have to hear the development section. We just do, because it's very short, first of all. It's short because the whole symphony is, in a sense, a development of a motto theme. There's development happening at so many different levels that Haydn doesn't need to stretch out the development section. But the interesting thing is that it works very, very intensely with the ideas that we've mentioned before. There's a fabulous, first it starts with a twofold repeat of the opening of the allegro, the da 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 dum bum ba dum bum ba dum bum bum, that business. That happens twice. Then over a very strange extended woodwind cantabile for like flutes and oboes, Haydn puts the rhythm bum ba dum very quietly in the string parts and very irregularly. You have no idea when it's going to show up. It's bum ba dum bum ba dum bum ba dum. But I mean, I'm just making that up, but you'll hear what I mean. There's no way to predict it. It's one of the most unusual passages, I think, in all the Haydn symphonies. In some respects, it sounds very modern. It really does, and it's just exceptional. And then after that thing, we get a combination of the first and second subjects. The bottom of the orchestra is going do 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 like that, and the top is going do 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 like this. So he combines the two, and with that we come to the end of the development section, and we run back into the recapitulation. So it's pretty brief, and I want you to hear it because it's brief in terms of time, but really, really eventful and dense in terms of working with the material that Haydn has presented. Here is the development. And then, last but not least, the coda. Now, the coda is particularly lovely here because it stretches out the return of the motto. It gives the motto a chance to try and find its way home. It's not in such a hurry to interrupt it. And it's a very, very beautiful passage that I want you to hear. And then, on to the closing bars with the rhythm and all the other stuff that we've noticed so far. It's really, really, and the ending with the trumpets and drums pounding away. It's beyond exciting. It really is. It's more fun than we have any right to have. So here is the coda of the first movement with the extended return of the original version of the motto, not the evolved one from the end of the exposition with the dance-like coda. It does its own thing. It's trying to work out a little more. Haydn develops that even a little more at the very end. Here it is. righty. So that's the first movement. I'm exhausted just thinking about it. I mean, it's just so much to enjoy in this symphony. So many different levels of brilliance operating all at the same time. Now, the second movement is a theme and variations. You've heard some bits of its material. I'm going to play you the entire theme and then the entire return and coda of the theme, or part of the return and the whole coda, which is quite marvelous and very important for future developments in the symphony. Now, the important thing to keep in mind in listening to this theme, it's in two halves, both are repeated, although Haydn writes out the repeats more or less, at least in a lot of these variations. One of the things about this symphony is that it doesn't have a lot of exact repetition. A lot of the repeats are written out with alterations in orchestration and tone color, which makes it really, really interesting. And that's going to be really important in the minuet. But for now, I'm going to play the whole thing with both halves. And remember the cadence. I mentioned the cadence thing, that he plays a little trick on us. And during the cadence part that goes do 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 like that. But then he repeats the cadence, and he does four. He goes do 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 da do 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 do. It's very clever, actually, to give us just a little bit of unexpectedness, an extra jolt. In case we were feeling that it had all become kind of mechanical and we knew what was going to happen, Haydn never lets us do that. He always throws in some sort of interesting change so that we snap back to attention. So here then is the theme of the second movement. All based, as you heard, on bump ba-dum, bump ba-dum, bump ba-dum, the rhythm, really, and the descending thing and the motto. You get the whole picture. Now the variations are very simple. There are only one, two, it's like three of them. There's the first one is just slightly decorated. The second is in the minor key, and casts a shadow over the entire movement. The next one is really fascinating. It's marked for the violins to be played sul ponticello on the bridge of the instrument, and it's a very brilliant variation with the violins going like this, and it gives the violin tone a kind of raspy, metallic quality. A lot of performances don't do it enough. They should make it sound sort of scrapier than they do. This one particularly is rather nice, but it's pleasant sounding. It should be a little harsher to make the brilliance a little more acerbic. But that's really quite brilliant and very unusual, a very rare indication and typical of Haydn in his exploitation of interesting tone color. I'm not going to play it here because you can hear it on your own. But then we get a variation that leads to the coda. And the coda is wonderful. The coda invents the second rhythmic motive. Da-da-dum, that thing. And it actually comes from the very end of the theme. If you listen carefully, tiny little bit, da 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 dum ba da da dum da 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 dum ba ba ya da dum da da dum. It does that, da da dum, and Haydn takes that little tiny da da dum, which you probably didn't even notice when we first heard it, and he works it up into this marvelous coda, based entirely on repetitions of that da-da-dum, ba-ba-dum. The woodwinds do it, the whole orchestra does it, and then finally they give up, and it ends with bump-ba-dum, 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 the other rhythm. And you hear these two rhythmic ideas, which are going to be so important as the symphony progresses. So that is the coda, and I'm going to play it for you now. Here it is. An important lesson here, because it teaches us that not everything in the symphony or in any Haydn symphony starts at the very beginning. He adds ideas sometimes as he goes, and new things pop up and are treated extensively in other movements. As, for example, the minuet, which doesn't use the bump-a-dum rhythm at all, and only uses bump-ba-dum constantly. I mean, really intensely. It works with that. I mean, it's so happy that the slow movement came up with it, because what would it have done without it? Now, this minuet is fascinating in Haydn because all of the repeats are written out. And the reason they're all written out is because they're not literal repeats. The music is repeated, but the tone color, the orchestration changes every time we hear it. And it changes marvelously. I mean, the articulation changes. It's full orchestra. It's loud. It's soft. It's woodwinds and brass and timpani, then just strings. I have to just play the whole minuet with all of its repeats. And it's got timpani solo in the second half. Da da dum dum ba dum. It's doing that rhythm thing, and the timpani come in with bum 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 bum, which reminds us of the first movement. I mean, there are just so many levels of belongingness in this music. It's incredible. So here is the entire minuet section. absolutely thrilling. I mean, it really is amazing. And the trio is no less thrilling. Haydn also writes out the repeats in the trio. And the second half of the trio, the repeat of that has some of the most wonderful orchestration he ever did. It's a solo for his Salomon, the impresario who brought him over to England and was the principal violin of the orchestra Haydn was using. He marks it Solomon solo, ma piano. I mean, it's your solo, but quietly, because the dynamic generally is quiet. So you've got the repeat of the tune with the first violin solo an octave above the whole orchestra, singing away with the rest of the orchestra doing an oompa band with the horns going yomp pop pop yomp pop pop yomp pop 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 yomp pop pop. Oh, it's just incredible. So I have to play the whole trio as well, which means you really get the whole movement. I mean, the whole thing, and then the whole minuet comes back. It's just incredible. So here's the trio. And at last, we come to the finale, a rondo. Now, it's a rondo it's one of Haydn's monothematic rondos. It doesn't really have any additional material beyond the ritornello, the main theme. But the main theme is really big and has lots of things happening in it. So there's lots of material for Haydn to use for these episodes, which are basically development sections. The first one is very contrapuntal. One of them is, minor key for contrast and all. And then there's a big coda at the end, which we'll get to. So I want to play you the opening theme, basically just the opening theme of the finale, leading to its not just the opening theme, leading into the first episode is the way I do it, because you'll hear it's just a big tune, and you've heard it already a couple times. It's derived from the motto. It uses it's kind of amazing. It's all based on the dun-da-dum-ba-ba-dum rhythm, except for the second half, the cadence bit. It uses both of these two rhythmic ideas, equally, really. And that's what makes it finale-like, because it sums up everything that's made this symphony special. The motto, the rhythmic things, the whole stuff. It's all here. And it's all packed into this opening theme. So here is the opening of the rondo. And then at last we get to the coda. Phew. Yes, we're coming to it. The coda has a slow interlude which returns to the feeling, if not really the melody, of the introduction, the motto. It's all based on the motto anyway. And the really interesting thing, you may have noticed in the second half of the theme, of the rondo theme, the repeated horns and trumpets. Bum, 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 bum. They were doing that, remember? And then there's this lovely chromatic scale on the bottom. It goes do 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 da 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 da, like that, which is really kind of cool sounding and surprising. So when Haydn gets to that beautiful quiet moment, that lovely quiet moment before the big wrap up, when the sound or mood of the introduction returns for the last time, it does da 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 da. And then finally at last, at the very end of the symphony, the answer is bum 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 ba da. It rises. After a whole symphony, when everything's going down, it goes up. It goes up, and that is the conclusion of the introduction, I think, that it's been waiting for the whole symphony, for the melody to finally turn up, and it does it with a smile. It's a smile. Yeah. You know, it's like posing for a portrait. And then there's a big, huge wind-up that's brilliant, you know, based on the da-da-dum-ba-ba-dum, and all that stuff. It's just banging along, and that wonderful chromatic slide that was going do-do-do-do-do-do, like that, flips itself around and closes the symphony with ba-da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, I mean it's oh wow, it's the most finally wonderfully satisfying few bars you've ever heard in your life. I mean, when it's over, you just feel like the universe has all been set aright, and it's glorious, absolutely glorious. So here is the coda. Symphony number 97, friends. You know, people don't talk about it, seldom gets played. What a piece of music. What an astonishing, brilliant, thrilling piece of music. And I'm sure I've just touched the surface of it. You know, I mean, this is just, you know, what I get from multiple hearings. But, you know, if you want to be like musicological and like really dig into it, I'm sure there's like all kinds of stuff going on that's even more remarkable. But I think this is enough. I really do. And I hope that you will sit down with this symphony, you know, grab it by the scruff of the neck, give it a good shake, and thrill to it the same way that I have. And it's been absolutely thrilling describing it to you. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.